Liam Carter had worked the night shift at Nexus Technologies for 3 years, and in all that time, he had never been summoned to the executive boardroom. So, when the security guard appeared at his workstation with a grim expression and told him the CEO wanted to see him immediately, Liam felt his stomach drop. He walked into that room knowing something was wrong, but he could not have prepared himself for what came next. Ava Sterling sat at the head of the long conference table, surrounded by board members in expensive suits, her face carved from stone. Liam stood before them all, his voice tight but steady, and asked the question that would change everything. "Why did you lie about me?" The room fell silent. Every pair of eyes shifted toward Ava, and for just 1 second, something flickered across her face that looked almost like fear. The night before had started like any other. Liam clocked in at 10 in the evening, nodded to the other technicians on the floor, and settled into his station in the server monitoring room. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting that familiar pale glow across rows of computer screens. He had been doing this job long enough that his body had adjusted to the inverted schedule, though his soul never quite had. Somewhere across the city, his daughter Chloe was being put to bed by his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, the retired teacher who watched her during his shifts in exchange for help with groceries and yard work. Chloe was 7 years old and understood more than any child her age should have to understand about sacrifice and making ends meet. Liam pulled up the system diagnostics and began his routine checks. The servers at Nexus Technologies powered financial transactions for banks across the eastern seaboard, which meant that any disruption could cost millions of dollars per minute. His job was to watch for anomalies, flag potential issues, and escalate anything serious to the on-call engineers. It was not glamorous work, but it paid reasonably well and offered health insurance, which was more than he could say for the construction jobs he had worked after his wife passed away 4 years ago. Cancer had taken her in 8 months, and it had taken everything from him except Chloe. She was the reason he showed up every night, the reason he kept going when exhaustion made his bones feel like lead. Around midnight, a notification popped up on his screen, a minor fluctuation in one of the backup servers. He logged it, checked the parameters, and determined it was within acceptable range. Standard procedure. He made a note in the system and continued his rounds. What he did not know was that 3 floors above him, in the executive suite that never seemed to sleep, a much larger problem was unfolding. The primary transaction server had experienced a critical failure, one that would result in a 6-hour outage and cost the company an estimated $12 million in lost revenue and client compensation. Liam learned about the outage the next morning when he was getting ready to leave. The day shift supervisor pulled him aside with a strange look on his face. There had been an incident, the man said, a major one, and somehow Liam's name had come up in the preliminary report. Liam felt confusion wash over him like cold water. He had not touched the primary servers. His job did not even give him access to those systems, but the supervisor just shrugged and said that was all he knew, and that Liam should probably expect to hear from human resources soon. He drove home in a daze, the morning sun hurting his tired eyes. When he picked up Chloe from Mrs. Patterson's apartment, she ran into his arms the way she always did, her small body warm against his chest. "Daddy, you look tired," she said, studying his face with those perceptive brown eyes she had inherited from her mother. "I'm okay, sweetheart," he told her, forcing a smile. Just a long night. They stopped at the diner on Maple Street for breakfast, their Saturday morning tradition. Chloe ordered pancakes with extra strawberries, and Liam nursed a cup of coffee while she chattered about her week at school. But his mind kept drifting back to what the supervisor had said. His name in a report about a system failure he had nothing to do with. It made no sense. That evening, while Chloe watched cartoons in the living room, Liam sat at the kitchen table and tried to piece together what might have happened. He had kept meticulous records of his shift, as he always did. He pulled up his personal backup of the night's logs on his laptop and went through them line by line. Everything was in order. The minor fluctuation he had flagged, his routine checks, his notes, Nothing that could possibly be connected to a primary server failure. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a cold feeling was beginning to take shape. Something was not right. He thought about Ava Sterling, the CEO he had only ever seen from a distance. She was younger than most executives at her level, maybe 35, with sharp features and blonde hair always pulled back in a severe ponytail. The employees on the night shift rarely interacted with upper management, but everyone knew who she was. She had taken over the company from her father 5 years ago, and under her leadership, Nexus had grown from a regional player to a major force in financial technology. People said she was brilliant but cold, the kind of leader who made decisions with her head and never her heart. What he did not know, what he could not have known, was that Ava Sterling had been in the building that night. She had been working late in her office when the system failure occurred, and she had come down to the server floor to assess the situation personally. She had walked past Liam's station at approximately 2 in the morning, while he was reviewing the notification about the backup server fluctuation. Their eyes had met for just a moment, and then she had moved on, her heels clicking against the polished floor. In that brief exchange, neither of them had spoken. But Ava had seen the document on his screen, and in the chaos of the hours that followed, when executives were screaming for answers and the IT director was scrambling to assign blame, that small detail had become a convenient anchor for a much larger lie. The call from Human Resources came on Monday morning, just as Liam was dropping Chloe off at school. He listened to the voicemail in the parking lot, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. They wanted to see him at 2 o'clock, a formal meeting. He should bring any documentation he felt was relevant to the incident. The words were polite, professional, but he could hear the undercurrent beneath them. He was not being invited to a conversation. He was being summoned to a trial. He spent the next few hours gathering his records, printing out logs, organizing everything into a folder that felt pathetically thin against the weight of what he suspected was coming. At 1:45, he walked into the Human Resources office on the 4th floor of the Nexus building. The room was beige and sterile, decorated with motivational posters that seemed to mock him. And there, standing beside the HR director's desk, was Ava Sterling herself. She did not look at him when he entered. Her gaze was fixed on a tablet in her hands, her expression unreadable. The HR director, a middle-aged woman named Sandra, gestured for Liam to sit down. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice carefully neutral. "We've completed our preliminary investigation into the server failure that occurred last Thursday night. The report indicates that a monitoring error in your sector may have contributed to the delayed response time." Liam felt his heart pounding in his chest. "That's not possible," he said, keeping his voice as steady as he could manage. "I logged everything according to protocol. The fluctuation I noted was in a backup server, completely unrelated to the primary system that failed." He reached for his folder, ready to show them his documentation, but Ava Sterling finally looked up. Her eyes met his, and he saw something there that surprised him. Not anger, not accusation, something closer to resignation. "The company has already made its determination," she said, her voice flat. "The evidence in the official report is conclusive." Liam stared at her. "Then, let me see the official report. Let me show you my logs. There's been a mistake." Sandra shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Mr. Carter, the investigation was thorough." "I want to see the report," Liam repeated, his voice rising slightly. "I have a right to see what I'm being accused of." A long silence filled the room. Ava's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The report is confidential," she said finally. "But I can assure you that the decision was not made lightly." There it was. The wall. Liam had worked enough jobs in his life to recognize when the fix was in, when the decision had been made before the meeting even started. But something in Ava's demeanor gave him pause. She would not meet his eyes. Her hand, resting on the tablet, trembled slightly. For someone delivering a verdict, she seemed almost as uncomfortable as he was. The door to the office opened, and a small figure appeared in the doorway. Chloe. She must have been brought from the company daycare, where she sometimes stayed when Liam had meetings. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Daddy!" She ran across the room and wrapped her arms around his waist, oblivious to the tension in the air. Liam hugged her back, his throat tight. "Hey, sweetheart. Give me just a minute, okay?" But Chloe had already noticed Ava standing there. She looked up at the CEO with curious eyes, the way children do when they are trying to understand something that does not make sense. "Why does Daddy look so sad?" she asked, her voice small and clear in the silent room. Ava Sterling's composure cracked, just for an instant. Something flickered across her face, something that looked almost like pain. Then she turned away, her heels clicking against the floor as she walked toward the door. "We're done here," she said without looking back. "HR will follow up with the formal documentation." And then she was gone, leaving Liam holding his daughter in an office that suddenly felt like a cage. The next 3 days passed in a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. Liam went through the motions of his shifts, but he could feel the weight of suspicion following him through the building. Coworkers who used to chat with him during breaks now avoided his eyes. His supervisor spoke to him in clipped sentences, as if prolonged contact might be contagious. The company had not officially fired him yet, but the message was clear. He was already gone in every way that mattered. Then, on Thursday evening, something unexpected happened. Liam was alone in the break room, staring at a vending machine sandwich he had no appetite for, when a young man in an IT uniform approached him. Liam recognized him vaguely. Kevin, one of the junior system administrators who worked on the floor above. "Mr. Carter," Kevin said, glancing around nervously. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Liam shrugged. "Sure." Kevin slid into the seat across from him, keeping his voice low. "Look, I don't know if this matters, but I found something. Something that doesn't add up." He pulled out a flash drive and set it on the table between them. "The official report says the failure originated from a monitoring error in your sector, but I pulled the actual system logs from that night, the raw data, before it was compiled into the report, and the failure signature doesn't match your station at all. It matches a configuration change that was made on the primary server itself by someone with administrative access." Liam felt his pulse quicken. Who has that kind of access? Kevin's face was pale. Only the IT director and the C-suite executives. And the log shows the change was made at 1:47 in the morning, right before the cascade failure began. He pushed the flash drive toward Liam. "I don't know what's going on, but someone signed off on a report that contradicts the actual evidence, and that someone was the CEO herself." Liam stared at the small device on the table. His mind was racing, trying to process what Kevin was telling him. Ava Sterling had signed the report. Ava Sterling had seen him that night, had walked past his station, and now, according to these logs, she had authorized a document that blamed him for something he had not done. Why? What possible reason could the CEO of a major technology company have for framing a night shift technician? He picked up the flash drive. "Why are you showing me this?" Kevin looked away. "Because my mom worked here 20 years ago, before Ava's father retired, and she was let go after a similar incident, blamed for something she didn't do. It destroyed her career." He stood up. "I'm not saying the situations are connected, but I think you deserve to know the truth. What you do with it is up to you." That night, Liam sat in his car in the parking lot outside Chloe's school, waiting for her after-school program to end. The flash drive felt like a bomb in his pocket. He had spent hours reviewing the files Kevin had given him, comparing them to the official report that HR had finally provided. The discrepancy was undeniable. The failure had originated from an administrative-level configuration change, not from any monitoring error, and the timestamp placed it squarely during the window when Ava Sterling had been on the server floor. Someone had made a mistake. A serious one. And instead of taking responsibility, They had chosen to sacrifice Liam Carter. The passenger door opened, and Chloe climbed in, her backpack bulging with art projects and homework. "Daddy, I made you something," she announced, pulling out a construction paper card covered in glitter and crooked hearts. "It says, 'Best Dad in the World.'" Liam took the card with hands that were not entirely steady. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. I love it." She beamed at him, and for a moment, the weight on his chest lifted slightly. Whatever happened next, whatever he decided to do with the information Kevin had given him, this was what mattered. This little girl who believed in him, who trusted him, who deserved a father who stood up for what was right. "Chloe," he said slowly, "do you remember the lady we saw at Daddy's work, the one with the yellow hair?" Chloe nodded. "The one who made you sad?" "She didn't mean to make me sad," Liam said, though he was not sure if that was true. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and sometimes they don't know how to fix them. Chloe considered this with the solemn gravity only a 7-year-old could muster. "Mrs. Patterson says, when you make a mistake, you should say sorry and try to do better." Liam smiled despite himself. "Mrs. Patterson is a wise woman." He started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, his decision crystallizing with every mile that passed beneath the wheels. Tomorrow, he would walk into that boardroom and demand the truth. Not for revenge, not for anger, but because some lies were too heavy to let stand. The executive boardroom on the 12th floor of Nexus Technologies was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Denver skyline. A mahogany table stretched nearly 20 feet long, surrounded by leather chairs that cost more than Liam made in a month. When he walked through those doors on Friday afternoon, uninvited and unannounced, every head in the room turned toward him with expressions ranging from confusion to outrage. Ava Sterling was seated at the head of the table, reviewing documents for the quarterly restructuring plan. The board members flanked her on either side, a wall of expensive suits and practiced disapproval. "Mr. Carter," Sandra from HR said, rising from her seat near the door. "You can't be in here. This is a private meeting." But Liam did not stop. He walked to the center of the room and stood facing Ava, his heart hammering in his chest but his voice steady. "Why did you lie about me?" The silence that followed was absolute. Ava's pen stopped moving mid-signature. Her eyes lifted to meet his, and for a moment something flickered in their depths. Fear, guilt, recognition. Then her expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice cool and controlled. "You're interrupting an important meeting. Security will escort you out." Liam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sheaf of papers, the printouts from Kevin's flash drive. "I'm talking about this," he said, setting the documents on the table, the actual system logs from the night of the failure. The ones that show the error originated from an administrative-level configuration change, not from my station. The ones that prove someone in this room made a mistake and decided to blame me for it. A murmur rippled through the board members. One of them, a silver-haired man in his 60s named Richard, leaned forward to examine the papers. Ava's face had gone pale, but she did not reach for the documents. "You signed the report," Liam continued, his voice gaining strength. "You were on the server floor that night. You saw me at my station, doing my job exactly as I was supposed to, and then you authorized a document that destroyed my reputation. I want to know why." The silver-haired board member looked up from the papers, his expression troubled. "Ava, is there something you need to tell us?" Before Ava could respond, another board member interjected, a younger man, maybe 40, with sharp features. "Ava," he said, his voice low and warning, "you promised. No one needs to know about that anymore." Liam's attention snapped to the younger man. "Know about what?" The man's face tightened, but he said nothing. And in that silence, Liam understood that whatever was happening here was bigger than a simple cover-up. There was something else, something buried. Ava stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This meeting is suspended," she announced. "Everyone out." Except Mr. Carter. The board members exchanged uncertain glances, but something in Ava's tone brooked no argument. One by one, they filed out, leaving Liam alone with the woman who had tried to ruin his life. She walked to the windows, her back to him, her silhouette framed against the gray Denver sky. "Do you know who my father was?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam frowned. "Edward Sterling, the founder of Nexus Technologies." "The founder," Ava repeated, something bitter in her tone. "The visionary, the great man whose portrait hangs in the lobby. Everyone remembers him as a genius. What they don't remember is what he did to get there." She turned to face him, and Liam was startled to see tears glistening in her eyes. 23 years ago, when this company was struggling to survive, there was another incident, another system failure that cost millions, and my father did exactly what I did. He found someone to blame, someone expendable. Liam felt the blood drain from his face. A terrible suspicion was forming. "Who?" Ava's voice cracked. Her name was Margaret Carter. She was a senior technician. One of the best. My father blamed her for the failure, destroyed her career, blacklisted her from the industry. She never recovered. She died 5 years later. She looked at him with eyes full of anguish. "She was your mother, wasn't she?" The world seemed to tilt beneath Liam's feet. His mother, the woman who had raised him alone, who had struggled with depression and alcoholism for as long as he could remember, who had died when he was 19 from what the doctors called complications, but what he knew was really a broken heart. "You knew," Liam said, his voice hollow. "You knew who I was when you hired me." Ava shook her head. "No. I didn't make the connection until last week. But once I realized, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The same thing, happening again. The same injustice." She stepped closer, her composure completely gone. "When the failure happened, I panicked. The IT director came to me with the report, already blaming you. And I remembered what my father taught me: protect the company, find someone who can absorb the damage. I told myself you were just a night shift worker, that you'd find another job." Her voice broke. "But then I saw your daughter, and I saw the way she looked at you, and I realized I was about to do to her exactly what my father did to you." The silence stretched between them, heavy with decades of pain. Liam did not know what to feel: anger at the woman who had nearly destroyed him, grief for the mother whose suffering now had a face attached to it, and somewhere beneath it all, a strange sense of pity for Ava Sterling, who had inherited not just a company but a legacy of cruelty. Before either could speak, the boardroom door burst open. Chloe stood in the doorway, her eyes wide. She had slipped away from the daycare again. "Daddy?" She ran across the room and grabbed his hand, then looked up at Ava with that penetrating gaze of hers, and she saw the tears. "Why is the lady crying?" Chloe asked. Liam knelt down. "Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're trying to be brave." Chloe looked back at Ava with something like sympathy. "My daddy says it's okay to be sad sometimes. It means you have a big heart." Ava Sterling, CEO of a billion-dollar company, began to sob. The suspended board meeting resumed an hour later. The members filed back in with wary expressions. What they found was Ava standing at the head of the table, her face composed but eyes red-rimmed, and Liam seated with Chloe on his lap. "I have something to tell you," Ava said, "about the server failure, about the report, and about a decision I made that I deeply regret." She laid out the truth in unflinching detail. The actual cause of the failure, her decision to sign the falsified report, her father's legacy. When she finished, Richard spoke first. "You're telling us you knowingly authorized a fraudulent report?" "Yes, and this pattern was established by your father, who did the same thing to this man's mother." "Yes." Richard leaned back. "Ava, this isn't just ethical violation. This is potentially criminal." The younger board member jumped in. "We need to consider the company's exposure, if this becomes public." "It should become public," Liam interrupted. Every eye turned to him. He stood up, settling Chloe gently in the chair. I didn't come here for money or revenge. I came for the truth. He looked at Ava. 23 years ago, your father destroyed my mother. Last week, you almost did the same to me. If you fire her now, nothing changes. The cycle just keeps repeating. He faced the board. I'm not asking you to let her off. I'm asking you to do something different. Make this company actually worth protecting. The room erupted in murmured debates. Through it all, Ava stood motionless. Finally, Richard raised his hand. We'll investigate fully. Ava, you'll be suspended pending results. He turned to Liam. We owe you a profound apology. The meeting adjourned. Soon, only Liam, Chloe, and Ava remained. What happens now? Liam asked. Ava walked to the window. Now I face consequences. I've spent my life trying to live up to my father's image. Turns out it was a lie built on others' suffering. She turned. Your mother deserved better. You deserved better. Chloe tugged Liam's sleeve. Daddy, can I give her something? She pulled a small tissue decorated with cartoon characters from her pocket and walked to Ava. Here. For your tears. My daddy says tissues help when you're sad. Ava took it with trembling hands. And for the second time that day, she began to cry. Cleaner tears this time. You have a remarkable daughter, she whispered. Yeah, Liam said quietly. I do. The investigation lasted 3 weeks. Co-workers who had shunned Liam now approached with awkward apologies. His supervisor treated him with uncomfortable deference, and every few days, Ava sent updates, asking if there was anything he needed. She was not a villain, he realized. She was a person shaped by forces she did not choose, struggling to become someone different. The day before the board's decision, Ava called. Her voice was flat. They're going to remove me as CEO. Too much liability. Is that what you want? It doesn't matter what I want. It's what I deserve. That's not what I asked. A pause. No. Without Nexus, I don't know who I am. Liam thought about his mother. The years she had spent adrift, unable to find footing after losing her job. Meet me in the parking garage. 15 minutes. She was waiting when he arrived, arms wrapped around herself. She looked smaller somehow. Without the CEO armor, she was just a woman facing consequences. You could run, Liam said. Resign before they fire you. Start over somewhere else. Ava shook her head. That's what my father would have done. I don't want to be him anymore. Liam studied her. The board will ask me tomorrow what they should do with you. Whether you should be fired. Whether I want to press charges. Ava's face went pale. What are you going to tell them? That destroying you won't bring my mother back. It will just create more pain. He took a breath. What this company needs isn't a new CEO. It needs different leadership, the kind that admits when it's wrong. And I'm going to tell them that if anyone can build that kind of company, it might be someone who understands exactly how much damage the old way can cause. Ava stared at him. Why would you do that, after everything? Because my mother spent her last years bitter and broken, consumed by what your father did. I watched it destroy her. And I promised myself I would never let hatred do the same to me. He met her eyes. You made a terrible mistake, but you told the truth when you could have kept lying. That has to count for something. The final board meeting arrived Friday afternoon. Liam sat with Chloe beside him, coloring quietly. The board members were arranged around the table. At the head stood Ava, waiting for her fate. Richard cleared his throat. Before we announce our decision, Mr. Carter has asked to address the board. Liam stood. The room fell silent. Most of you don't know this, but 23 years ago, a woman named Margaret Carter worked at this company. She was a senior technician. When a system failure cost millions, Edward Sterling blamed her. Destroyed her reputation. Ended her career. He paused. Margaret Carter was my mother. She died when I was 19, broken by what happened here. The board members shifted uncomfortably. When the same thing almost happened to me, I wanted justice. But then I thought about what justice really means. He looked at Ava. My mother spent her last years consumed by anger. She never got justice. She never got an apology. That bitterness ate her alive. His voice softened. I don't want that for myself. And I don't want it for my daughter. I want her to see that it's possible to be wronged and still choose to move forward. He faced the board. Don't fire Ava Sterling. Make her fix what's broken. Build the kind of company her father should have built. If you fire her, you're just doing what this company has always done. Finding someone to blame, making them disappear. But the problem isn't Ava. The problem is a culture that taught her lying was acceptable. Changing the CEO won't fix that. The board deliberated for 2 hours. When Richard emerged, his expression was unreadable. Ava Sterling will remain CEO on probationary terms. She will oversee a complete overhaul of accountability systems. She will personally apologize to Mr. Carter before the entire company, and she will establish a foundation in his mother's name to support wrongfully terminated employees. He turned to Liam. We'd also like to offer you a position. Director of Employee Advocacy. Your job would be to make sure nothing like this happens again. Liam looked at Chloe. I'll need to think about it. But he was smiling. The company-wide meeting was held Monday. Hundreds of employees packed the auditorium. When Ava took the stage, the room fell silent. She spoke for 30 minutes. About the server failure, the falsified report, her father's legacy of deception, and about Liam Carter, whose courage in demanding the truth had given her the chance to become something different. When she finished, she turned to where Liam stood at the edge of the stage. He walked forward, Chloe holding his hand. I'm sorry, Ava said, her voice thick with emotion. For what I did. For what my father did. For the years of pain this company caused your family. I can't undo it, but I promise to spend my career making sure it never happens again. She bowed her head. Chloe tugged Liam's hand. Daddy, she whispered into the nearby microphone. I told you she was nice. Surprised laughter rippled through the audience. Then someone started clapping, then another, until the whole auditorium filled with applause for the possibility that people could change, that institutions could be reformed, that truth could set people free. Later that evening, Liam stood alone in the parking garage. Footsteps echoed behind him. Ava approached, looking lighter somehow. Thank you, she said, for giving me a chance I didn't deserve. My mother used to say everyone deserves a second chance. It took me a long time to understand what she meant. They stood in silence. I've been thinking about the job offer, Liam said. I'll take it. On one condition. Every year, on the anniversary of my mother's death, this company shuts down for a day, not a holiday, a day of reflection. So everyone remembers that behind every corporate decision, there are real people whose lives can be changed forever. Ava was quiet. Then she nodded. They shook hands. A promise. A beginning. As Liam walked to his car, his phone buzzed. A text from Chloe, sent from Mrs. Patterson's phone. A photo of macaroni and cheese with the message, Daddy, come home soon. I saved you the best parts. He smiled and typed back, On my way, sweetheart. And as he drove through the Denver evening toward his daughter and their small apartment, Liam Carter thought about truth. About how it could destroy and how it could heal. About how the same words that broke his mother had somehow become the foundation for something new. Sometimes the truth does not destroy a person, he thought. Sometimes it saves them. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, it saves everyone.